The scrap that changed everything. The deep space salvage ship Iron Will drifted through the silent void, its engines humming softly as it approached a massive field of wreckage. Captain Darius Holt leaned forward in his chair, eyes scanning the twisted metal remains floating ahead. "This is bigger than I expected," he muttered, adjusting the holographic display on the control panel. Beside him, Lieutenant Mara Voss whistled in awe. "Looks like the Torquari don't care much about cleaning up their mess." Darius grinned. The Torquari, a powerful alien race, had been at war with humanity for years. They saw humans as lesser beings, not worthy of direct confrontation. Instead, they treated them like pests, easily ignored, unless they got in the way. This junkyard was proof of their arrogance. "All right, team," Darius said through the ship's comms. "We've got a job to do. Keep your eyes open for anything valuable. We take what we need and get out before anyone notices." The salvage crew, a group of 6 experienced scrappers, suited up and prepared to launch their small collection drones. Their mission was simple: find anything useful, strip it for parts, and move on. But as the drones swept through the wreckage, the scanners picked up something unusual. "Captain," Mara said, her voice suddenly tense, "I'm getting strange readings from that wreck on the far side." Darius frowned and zoomed in on the display. Among the broken hulls of old Torquari warships was a large, dark metallic structure, half buried in floating debris. Unlike the other scraps, this one was intact. "Energy readings are fluctuating," Mara continued. "It's unstable. Could be dangerous," said Engineer Kyle Briggs, who sat at the console next to her. "Or it could be valuable." Darius didn't need convincing. "Prep the drones. I want a closer look." The drones glided through the wreckage, carefully removing loose metal pieces and revealing the core of the structure. What they found was something no human had ever seen before: a massive, glowing energy sphere surrounded by alien machinery. "It's still active," Mara whispered. Kyle ran a quick scan. "This tech is beyond anything we've seen. It's not just an engine or a power source. It's something else." Darius knew one thing: if the Torquari threw this away, they either didn't understand it or couldn't control it. Either way, it was worth taking. "Bring it aboard," he ordered. "Carefully." The drones latched onto the alien core and slowly pulled it toward the iron will. As soon as it was secured in the cargo hold, the ship's systems flickered. The lights dimmed, and a low hum filled the air. "Captain," Mara said, eyes wide. "The core, it's reacting to our systems." Before Darius could respond, the ship's alarm blared. "Incoming vessel detected," shouted pilot Jensen Kane from the cockpit. On the main display, a Torquari patrol ship appeared, its sleek silver hull cutting through space with terrifying speed. "They saw us," Kyle cursed. "Of course they did," Darius muttered. "They don't like humans touching their trash." The comm system crackled to life. A deep, distorted voice spoke in perfect but cold standard English. "Human vessel, you have taken something that does not belong to you. Surrender the device immediately." Darius exchanged a look with his crew. They all knew what would happen if they obeyed. The Torquari never took prisoners. "Not an option," he replied. The Torquari ship opened fire. A pulse blast rocked the iron will, sending tools and loose equipment flying. Sparks rained from overhead panels as the shields struggled to hold. "We won't last long in a fight," Jensen yelled, gripping the controls. "We need to get out of here." "Trying," Darius shouted back, gripping his seat as another blast shook the ship. Then, something strange happened. The alien core pulsed with blinding white light, sending out a shockwave that spread through the ship. The control panels flashed with unreadable symbols, and every system momentarily went dark. Then the lights returned, but something was different. "The Torquari ship," Mara whispered. It's not moving." Darius turned to the display. The enemy ship was completely frozen, drifting lifelessly in space. Kyle's voice was shaky. Whatever that core just did, it shut them down. For the first time in history, a human ship had rendered a Torqueri warship powerless. Darius took a slow breath. They had to leave before more ships arrived, but the implications of this moment were enormous. "We're taking that core back to Earth," he said firmly, "and we're going to find out exactly what it can do." The Iron Will powered up its engines and vanished into the void, leaving behind the silent, helpless Torqueri patrol ship and the first chapter of a story that would change the fate of humanity forever. A desperate escape and a hidden power. The Iron Will shot through the vast emptiness of space, engines burning hot as it raced away from the dead Torqueri patrol ship. Inside the cockpit, Captain Darius Holt gripped the edge of his seat, eyes locked on the sensors. "That was too easy," he muttered. Lieutenant Maravos glanced at the readings. No movement from their ship, no signals, no distress call. "It's like it just died." "That core did something to them," Engineer Kyle Briggs said. His fingers danced across the control panel, trying to make sense of the data. "It sent out a pulse, a kind of energy I've never seen before. Their systems didn't just shut down. It's like their ship doesn't exist anymore." "Which means," Pilot Jensen Kane cut in, "we need to get the hell out of here before someone finds out what happened." Darius didn't argue. "Punch it." The Iron Will surged forward, engines roaring as it entered faster than light speed, leaving the wreckage behind. But the feeling of victory was short-lived. Within moments, the warning alarm screamed to life. "Incoming signature." Mara's voice was sharp, urgent. "Multiple ships, fast-moving. Torqueri warships." Darius clenched his jaw. They were too late. The holographic display flickered, showing a fleet of sleek, silver warships dropping out of hyperspace behind them. The Torqueri weren't just sending patrols anymore. They were sending hunters. "How the hell did they track us?" Kyle demanded. Mara's hands flew over the controls. "I don't know, but they're coming in hot. 5 ships closing fast." Darius cursed under his breath. They weren't built for this kind of fight. The Iron Will was a salvage ship, sturdy, reliable, but not a war vessel. Against a single patrol, they had a chance. Against 5 heavily armed Torqueri hunters, no chance. "They're hailing us," Jensen reported. "Let me guess," Darius said bitterly. "They're not here to chat." A cold, mechanical voice filled the cockpit. "Human vessel, you have taken what is not yours. You will surrender or be destroyed." Darius exhaled slowly, weighing their options. Surrender wasn't an option. He turned to Kyle. "Can we jump again?" "Not right away," Kyle said, scanning the energy levels. "The FTL drive needs 2 minutes to recharge." "We don't have 2 minutes," Mara snapped. "They're locking weapons." Darius made a decision. "If we can't outrun them, we'll have to outthink them." He opened the comms to the entire ship. "Listen up. We're about to do something stupid. Strap in and hold on." Jensen didn't need more instruction. He yanked the controls hard, sending the Iron Will into a steep dive through a nearby asteroid field. Massive space rocks tumbled through the void, some the size of entire cities. "Their ships are bigger than ours," Darius shouted. "They can't maneuver as fast in tight spaces. We use that to our advantage." Mara gritted her teeth. "And if we crash? Then we die in style." The ship weaved through the chaos, dodging jagged asteroid fragments that spun dangerously close. Behind them, the Torqueri ships hesitated, adjusting their formation. "They're splitting up," Jensen reported. 2 of them are taking the long route around. "That buys us time, but not much," Mara warned. 3 are still on our tail." Another alarm blared. A Torqueri ship had locked onto them. "Incoming missiles. Deploy countermeasures," Darius barked. A volley of small, high-energy flares shot from the Iron Will's hull, confusing the incoming missiles. 2 detonated harmlessly against a drifting asteroid. The third, however, kept coming. "It's still tracking us," Mara yelled. Kyle's eyes widened. It's not tracking heat, it's tracking the energy signature of the core. Darius's stomach sank. That's how they found us. The Torqueri didn't need a tracking device. The alien core they had stolen was giving off a signal, and it was leading the enemy straight to them. Shut the core down, Darius ordered. Kyle's fingers flew across the controls. Trying. But it's not listening. Before Darius could respond, the missile hit them. The explosion rocked the ship, sending it into a violent spin. The hull groaned under the pressure, lights flickered, and warning sirens screamed. Jensen fought with the controls, desperately trying to stabilize the ship as it tumbled toward a massive asteroid. "We're gonna hit," Mara shouted. Darius grabbed the emergency override. Not today. With a final desperate pull, the engines fired at full blast, shifting their trajectory just enough to skim the asteroid's surface. A sharp shockwave rattled the ship, but they didn't crash. Instead, they burst through the other side, right into an abandoned Torqueri battle station. Darius's heart pounded. Get us inside. Now. Jensen dived toward the station's docking bay, slipping through the decayed metal doors just as the Torqueri ships closed in. The iron wheel slammed onto the station's floor, skidding to a rough halt. Silence. For the first time since the chase began, the crew could breathe. Kyle exhaled. Please tell me we didn't just trap ourselves. Darius looked at the dark, empty corridors stretching ahead. If we did, he said grimly, then we'd better find a way out fast. Because something tells me, the Torqueri aren't the only things hunting us. Reverse engineering the ultimate weapon. The iron will lay in silence. It told scorched and battered from the high-speed chase. The ship had barely made it inside the abandoned Torqueri battle station, and now, dim emergency lights flickered along the rusted corridors. Captain Darius Holt exhaled slowly, his heart still pounding. They had escaped, for now. But the real problem was sitting in the cargo hold. "Status report," he ordered. Lieutenant Maravos tapped at the control panel, her face pale. "Engines are damaged. Shields are at 12%. Weapons, don't even ask." Kyle Briggs, the ship's engineer, wiped sweat from his brow. "And the core? Well, it's still humming like an angry hornet. Whatever energy it's putting out, it's strong enough to make every Torqueri warship in the sector come sniffing around." Darius ran a hand through his hair. "So we're sitting in a metal tomb, broadcasting a signal to the whole damn galaxy." "Pretty much," Kyle muttered. A deep silence settled over the crew. Outside, the Torqueri hunters circled the battle station, unable to fire their weapons without risking structural collapse. They wanted the core intact, and they weren't leaving without it. "We need answers," Darius said. "We need to figure out what the hell this thing is before the Torqueri come knocking." Mara exchanged a glance with Kyle. "And how do you suggest we do that? We don't exactly have a Torqueri engineer lying around." Darius's lips curled into a grin. "No, but we do have this station." Kyle's eyes widened. "Wait, you're saying?" "I'm saying we just landed inside an old Torqueri military facility. They must have logs, schematics, something that tells us what this core is and how it works." Jensen Kane, their pilot, let out a slow whistle. "So you want to break into an alien mainframe and hope it doesn't fry our brains?" "More or less," Darius said. Mara sighed. "Of course, just another normal day for us. The hunt for the truth." Armed with their rifles and portable translation pads, Darius and his crew moved cautiously through the dark corridors of the station. Dust and rust coated the walls. Flickering holographic panels displayed strange, unreadable symbols. Whatever had happened here, the Torqueri had abandoned this place a long time ago. "This place gives me the creeps," Kyle muttered, adjusting his flashlight. "Like a graveyard." Darius ignored the uneasy feeling crawling down his spine. They had no time for fear. They reached what looked like a command center, a large, circular room with a central control panel surrounded by darkened screens. "All right, Let's see what secrets they left behind, Darius said. Kyle knelt by the controls, hooking up a human interface device to the alien terminal. The screens flickered to life, displaying lines of Torqueri text and holographic schematics. Mara leaned in. "Can you translate it?" "Give me a sec," Kyle muttered. He tapped a few keys, and the translation pad worked its magic. Then the screen changed. A single word appeared, glowing bright against the darkness. Project Starfire. Darius frowned. Starfire. Kyle scrolled through the data. It's a weapon. Or, at least, it was meant to be. Mara's brow furrowed. "Wait, you're telling me the Torqueri built this thing as a weapon, and then just threw it away?" Kyle read deeper. Not exactly. They tried to use it, but they failed. The core's energy was too unstable. Any attempt to fire it would cause a catastrophic chain reaction. In simple terms, it would have destroyed them. Darius finished. Mara let out a low whistle. So instead of fixing it, they dumped it into a junkyard and hoped no one would find it. Kyle grinned. "Bad luck for them, because we found it." Darius's mind raced. The Torqueri had created something so dangerous, so uncontrollable, that even they had been afraid to use it. But humans had a way of turning impossibilities into victories. He turned to his crew. "If they couldn't make it work, that doesn't mean we can't." Kyle raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting we, what? Reverse engineer a failed superweapon?" "That's exactly what I'm suggesting," Darius said. "We perfect it. We make it work. And when the Torqueri come for us," Mara grinned, "we give them a taste of their own nightmare." The clock is ticking. Kyle got to work, extracting data from the station's logs. The schematics of Project Starfire revealed something terrifying. The core wasn't just a power source. It was a weaponized singularity generator. It's designed to create a controlled black hole. Kyle explained, eyes gleaming with excitement. One shot could collapse an entire fleet into itself. Jensen whistled. "That's one hell of a superweapon." "But the problem," Kyle continued, "is controlling it. The Torqueri failed because they couldn't stabilize the singularity before it went critical." Darius folded his arms. "Then we need to find a way to do what they couldn't." Mara frowned. "We don't have time for trial and error. The Torqueri fleet is right outside. They'll break in eventually." Darius thought for a moment, then smirked. "Then let's make them think we already finished it." Kyle blinked. "You want to bluff an entire alien fleet?" Jensen grinned. "That might actually work." Darius turned to the holographic display, watching the enemy ships outside. "If they think we've stabilized the weapon, they'll have to make a choice. Risk fighting us, or run." Mara nodded. "And if they call our bluff?" Darius smiled, his confidence unwavering. "Then we stow the race against time." The iron will sat in eerie silence within the decayed Torqueri battle station. Outside, an entire fleet of alien warships hovered, waiting, watching. The enemy was calculating their next move, but so was Captain Darius Holt. Inside the dimly lit command center, the crew was racing against a ticking clock. They had two problems. The enemy would breach the station soon. The weapon wasn't actually ready to fire. Darius stood at the holographic display, watching the fleet's slow, patient movements. The Torqueri had no reason to rush. They thought they had already won. "They're waiting for us to panic," Lieutenant Mara Voss said, adjusting the station's security feeds, "or surrender." Kyle Briggs, their engineer, let out a frustrated sigh as he studied the schematics of Project Starfire. "We still don't have a way to stabilize the energy output. If we fire it now, it won't just destroy them. It'll take us with it." Darius exhaled, tapping a finger against the table. They needed a breakthrough. Fast. Then, the station's power flickered. The hum of machinery shifted, and for a split second, the core inside their cargo bay pulsed. Not erratic, not unstable, but controlled. Kyle's head snapped up. Did you see that? Mara frowned. What just happened? Kyle rushed to the console, eyes scanning the energy readings. The station's old power grid just interacted with the core. Darius narrowed his eyes. In a good way or a we're about to explode way. Kyle's fingers flew across the controls. Good. Very good. This station was designed for Torkari weaponry. It stabilized the core for a second. If we can figure out how, we might actually be able to make this work. Jensen Kane, their pilot, leaned in. You're saying we can fire the weapon? Kyle hesitated. I'm saying we have a chance to make it work, but we'd need to integrate the station's power conduits directly into the core. If we do it wrong, this whole place turns into a black hole. Darius cracked a grin. Sounds like our usual kind of gamble. The saboteur among them. As Kyle and Mara worked, an alert flashed across the security feeds. Mara's heart skipped a beat. Captain, we have a problem. The screen showed a shadow moving through the ship's corridors. Someone, or something, was inside the station with them. We're the only ones in here, Kyle muttered. Not anymore, Darius said darkly. Grabbing his rifle, he motioned for Jensen to follow. Mara, keep working on the core. Kyle, stay here and keep those systems running. If this is what I think it is, we might have a saboteur on board. Jensen nodded, checking his weapon. Let's hope it's just a lost rat. They moved quickly, boots silent against the metal floor. The station had been abandoned for years, but somehow, someone had been left behind. Or worse, someone had gotten in. As they rounded a corner, they saw movement. A humanoid figure crouched near an open panel, working on something. Darius raised his rifle. Step away. Now. The figure turned. It was Torkari, a scared, battle-worn alien, clad in a torn officer's uniform, stared back at them with cold, reptilian eyes. Jensen tightened his grip on his weapon. Well, that's not good. The Torkari didn't attack. Instead, he spoke in perfect standard English. You don't understand what you are playing with, human. Darius's finger hovered over the trigger. Oh, I think we do. The alien's yellow eyes gleamed. No, you truly don't. Then Darius saw what the Torkari had been working on. A detonation device attached to the station's main power grid. He was trying to destroy everything. Darius fired. The shot hit the Torkari in the leg, sending him crashing to the floor. But his clawed hand still reached for the detonator. Jensen lunged, kicking the device away. It skidded across the floor, but the countdown had already begun. Shit, Darius muttered. Mara, we need you in the command center now. The station's alarms blared, flashing red lights across the walls. If they didn't stop that countdown, everything, the core, the station, and their only chance at survival, would be gone. A choice that changed everything. Back in the command center, Mara rushed to the terminal, trying to override the detonation. The countdown was at 45 seconds. Kyle was sweating. If this thing goes off, the station's power surge will collapse the core before we can fire it. Darius grabbed the wounded Torkari by the collar. How do we stop it? The alien let out a harsh, broken laugh. You don't. Mara cursed under her breath. 30 seconds. Jensen looked at the Torkari, then at the core's schematics. An idea hit him. Wait, what if we don't stop it? Kyle turned. Excuse me. Jensen pointed to the energy surge readings. That countdown is going to cause a massive energy overload, right? What if we channel that energy into the core instead of letting it explode? Kyle's eyes widened. It could stabilize the singularity. Darius made a split-second decision. Do it. Mara's hands flew over the controls. Rerouting power now. 10 seconds. Kyle manually adjusted the core's energy output, sweat dripping down his face. If this works, I want a damn medal. 5 seconds. The Torkari bared his fangs. You will only destroy yourselves. 3, 2, 1. The station shook violently, the detonation device detonating. But instead of an explosion, the energy poured into the core. For a split second, time seemed to freeze. Then the air hummed. The core stabilized. Kyle's jaw dropped. It worked. Jensen let out a breathless laugh. Holy hell, it actually worked. Mara checked the readings, then looked up at Darius. Captain, we have a fully operational superweapon. Darius turned toward the main display, where the Torquary fleet was still waiting outside. A slow grin spread across his face. Then let's show them what happens when you throw away something humans can use. He pressed the command. Fire. The battle for humanity's survival. A deep, unnatural hum filled the Iron Will's control room. Every screen flickered, the station's power grid surged, and the Torquary Starfire core pulsed like a living thing. Outside, the Torquary fleet loomed. Sleek silver warships drifted in the darkness, weapons locked, engines humming like silent predators. They had waited long enough. Their patience was over. And now, so was humanity's weakness. Captain Darius Holt stood tall, his hand hovering over the firing command. The battle station's reclaimed power conduits had funneled just enough raw energy into the core, turning a failed experiment into a fully armed superweapon. Final status check, he ordered. Lieutenant Mara Voss scanned the readings, her fingers flying over the console. Core energy stable at 95%. Containment field holding. How long until we can fire? Asked pilot Jensen Kane. Kyle Briggs, their engineer, swallowed hard. It's ready, but I should warn you. We've never fired an experimental singularity cannon before. Darius smirked. No one ever made history by playing it safe. Jensen cracked his knuckles. Then let's give the Torquary a reason to rethink their arrogance. First strike. Outside, the Torquary fleet commander watched from the bridge of his warcruiser, eyes narrowing at the human silence. The battle station should have been helpless. And yet, something felt wrong. Human vessel, the cold, mechanical voice of the Torquary echoed over the comms. We will not ask again. Surrender the core, or we will erase you. Darius leaned forward, activating the return channel. You want it. His grin widened. Then catch. He slammed the fire command. A low, guttural vibration ripped through the station as Project Starfire activated for the first time. A pulse of pure gravitational force erupted from the station's core, condensing into a single point, a miniature singularity, before launching forward like a torpedo of raw destruction. The Torquary didn't have time to react. The singularity shot through space, colliding with their lead warship. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, the ship folded inward. It didn't explode. It didn't shatter. It simply collapsed. The gravitational pull crushed it into itself, warping metal and alien bodies into a pinprick of light before. Pop. The ship was gone. The entire Torquary fleet froze. For the first time in history, humanity had fired a weapon that defied the laws of nature. Mara's mouth fell open. Holy hell, it actually worked. Kyle let out a shaky breath. That was one ship. Imagine what happens if we fire again. Darius's gaze hardened. No need to imagine. The Torquary fleet broke their silence. The warship suddenly surged forward. Blasters charged, cannons primed. If they hadn't taken the humans seriously before, they did now. The counterattack. Multiple inbound missiles. Jensen shouted. They're throwing everything at us. Shields at max. Murray yelled. Explosions rocked the station. Energy bolts crashed against the shields, shaking the floors beneath their feet. The Torquary had gone from predators to cornered beasts, and now they were fighting with everything they had. Status of the core, Darius demanded. Kyle swore under his breath. The singularity cannon has a cooldown. We can't fire again yet. Darius gritted his teeth. Then we hold them off until we can. Jensen took control of the station's defensive guns, unleashing a storm of laser fire and railgun blasts at the incoming ships. 2 Torquari frigates shattered under the counterattack, but the warcruisers kept coming. "They're closing in," Mara warned. "If they board us, it's over." Darius made a call, a risky one. "Divert power from life support to shields." Kyle hesitated. "That'll only buy us." "Do it." Kyle punched the override. The lights dimmed. Oxygen levels dropped. But the shields doubled in strength, absorbing the next wave of enemy fire. Jensen let out a wild laugh. "Captain, remind me never to play poker with you." Darius smirked. "You'd lose." The final blow. The Torquari warcruisers closed the distance, their weapons charging for one final strike. If they unleashed their full firepower, the station wouldn't survive. But neither would they. Mara's console beeped. "Core recharge. The cannon is ready." Darius didn't hesitate. "Fire." The battle station shook violently as the Singularity cannon launched a second shot. The miniature black hole tore through space, striking the largest Torquari warcruiser dead center. The ship buckled, warped, and imploded, vanishing into nothingness. The remaining 3 warships stopped moving. The Torquari commander's voice crackled over the comms, this time filled with something humans had never heard from them before. "Fear. This is impossible." Darius leaned closer to the comms. "Not impossible. Human ingenuity." There was a long silence. Then, the Torquari fleet turned and fled. For the first time in history, humanity had not just survived a battle against the Torquari. They had won. The aftermath. The crew sat in stunned silence, watching the Torquari ships disappear into the void. Kyle finally broke the silence. "So, what do we do with a superweapon that can bend reality?" Darius leaned back, staring at the now-dormant Starfire core in the cargo hold. "This thing is too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands," he admitted. "Even ours." Mara raised an eyebrow. "You suggesting we destroy it?" Darius exhaled. "Not destroy. Bury. We find a place where no one, human or alien, can ever get their hands on it again." Jensen smirked. "And if the Torquari ever come back?" Darius chuckled. "Then we remind them that humans don't just survive." His eyes glowed with quiet pride. "We adapt. We build. And when pushed to the edge, we fight back." The crew exchanged knowing grins. The war wasn't over. But today, humanity had proven it would never be underestimated again. Sacrifice and victory. The iron will drifted in the silence of space, its hull battered but intact. Inside, the crew sat in stunned disbelief. They had done the impossible. They had not only survived but forced the Torquari, one of the most advanced species in the galaxy, to retreat. For the first time in history, humanity had won. Yet, victory carried a weight. Captain Darius Holt stood at the center of the bridge, staring at the Starfire core, now dormant in the cargo hold. The deadliest weapon ever created. A weapon that could turn the tide of war, or wipe entire worlds from existence. And it was in his hands. "We need to destroy it." The words came from Lieutenant Mara Voss, her voice quieter than usual. Kyle Briggs frowned. "Destroy. Do you know how many lives we just saved by using it? This thing makes us unstoppable." Darius exhaled. "That's the problem." Jensen Kane leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "You really think the Torquari are just gonna accept defeat?" "No way. They'll come back. Harder. Meaner. And next time, they'll be ready for us." Mara nodded. "Exactly. And if they realize we still have the core, they won't just come for revenge. They'll come to wipe us out." Kyle clenched his jaw. "So what? We hand it over. Bury it, and pretend we never found it." "No," Darius said, turning toward the holo display, where Earth's distant glow flickered in the background. "We make sure no one ever gets their hands on it again." Silence settled over the crew. The weight of the decision hung in the air like a storm about to break. "There might be another way," Kyle said finally. "A dangerous plan." The crew gathered in the station's command center, staring at the schematics of the Starfire core and its unstable energy source. Kyle pointed at the data stream. The core wasn't just meant to be a weapon. The Torquari originally designed it as a star drive prototype, a way to manipulate gravitational fields for faster-than-light travel. Mara frowned. "You're saying we could use it to send it somewhere else?" Kyle grinned. "Not just anywhere. We could throw it into deep space, so far that no one, not even us, could ever find it again." Jensen whistled. "That's a hell of a trick. What's the catch?" Kyle sighed. "We'd have to activate it manually. Someone would need to be on board the station when it goes into the singularity jump." The room went dead silent, because that meant whoever stayed behind wouldn't be coming back. The choice. Darius already knew what he had to do. He was the captain. This was his responsibility. Before he could speak, Mara stepped forward. "I'll do it." Darius's head snapped toward her. "Like hell you will." Mara crossed her arms. "You need to get back to Earth. This isn't a debate, Captain." "It's not happening," Darius said firmly. "We're going to find another way." "There isn't another way," Mara snapped. "If we don't send the core away now, it's only a matter of time before someone finds it. The Torquari, the Dominion, even our own people. This thing is too dangerous." Kyle clenched his fists. "Mara, you don't." "Yes, I do." The fire in her eyes silenced everyone. She turned back to Darius, softer this time. "You once told me a leader has to be willing to do whatever it takes to protect his people." She smiled. "Guess I finally learned that lesson." Darius's throat tightened. He knew she was right. And it tore him apart. The goodbye. The crew gathered in the Iron Will's cargo hold, the air heavy with unspoken words. Mara strapped into a modified escape pod, linked directly to the station's systems. The moment she engaged the jump drive, the Starfire core would vanish into the abyss of deep space. Kyle swallowed hard. "You sure about this?" Mara grinned. "Come on, Briggs. You always said I was too stubborn for my own good." Jensen gave a small salute. "You're one hell of a pilot, Mara." She smirked. "And don't you forget it." Then she turned to Darius. They had fought side by side for years, survived the worst the galaxy had thrown at them. And now, this was goodbye. "Keep them safe," Mara said softly. Darius nodded. "You have my word." She climbed into the pod, sealing the hatch. The countdown began. 10 seconds. The Iron Will pulled away, the station growing smaller in the viewport. 5 seconds. Mara's voice crackled through the comms one last time. "See you, Captain." Then, the singularity jump activated. A blinding pulse of energy erupted from the station, folding space around it like a collapsing star. The entire structure vanished in an instant, dragged into a rift that no one would ever follow. And just like that, Mara Voss was gone. The aftermath. The Iron Will drifted in silence. No one spoke. No one could. Jensen exhaled sharply. She actually did it. Kyle stared at the empty void. She saved us all. Darius sat back in his chair, eyes fixed on the stars. The war wasn't over. The Torquari would return. Other enemies would rise. But today, humanity had won. And they had done it their way. The legacy of the Judgment Corps. The Iron Will drifted through the cold silence of space. The battle was over. The war, at least for now, had been won. But no one on board felt victorious. Captain Darius Holt sat in the dim glow of the command console, eyes locked on the empty void where the Torquari battle station had been, where Mara Voss had made her final stand. No wreckage remained, no trace of what had once been the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. The Starfire core was gone. So was she. Returning home. Jensen Kane broke the silence first. "Command's gonna have questions." Kyle Briggs let out a hollow laugh. "No kidding. Hey, Captain, where's the alien superweapon you found?" "Oh yeah, we launched it into the abyss of deep space and lost one of our best officers doing it." Darius exhaled slowly. "They wouldn't understand." Kyle shook his head. "They wouldn't, but she did." The words hit deep. Darius turned toward the main viewport, where the familiar blue glow of Earth was now coming into range. Their mission was over. But what came next? The heroes that never were. The Iron Will landed in one of Earth's hidden orbital bases, far from the public eye. No celebrations, no grand welcomes, just silence. The brass wanted answers. The military, the politicians, the shadowy figures who controlled the war from behind their desks. They wanted the weapon. They were furious when they learned it was gone. "You had an opportunity to change the balance of power," one of the admirals snapped in the debriefing. Darius stood firm. "The moment humanity wields a weapon like that, we become no better than the Torqueri." Some called him reckless. Some called him a fool. But there were others, those who had seen war for what it was, who understood. The Starfire Core had been too powerful for any species to control. Mara had given her life to make sure no one ever got their hands on it. And that sacrifice would never be known. The future of the war. The Torqueri, humiliated by their defeat, had vanished into the shadows. No counterattack came. No immediate retaliation. But Darius knew better. They weren't gone. They were waiting. Planning. The next time they returned, it would be with a new strategy, a new weapon, a new way to try and break humanity. But this time, humanity had proved something. They weren't weak. They weren't just survivors. They were fighters. And the Torqueri knew it now. A promise to the fallen. A week later, Darius stood at the edge of the Atlantic orbital dock, staring out at the endless stretch of space. Kyle and Jensen joined him. No one spoke for a while. Finally, Kyle sighed. "Feels wrong, doesn't it? That no one will ever know what she did." Darius didn't respond at first. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small metal tag, Mara's dog tag. He had found it in the ship's quarters, left behind as if she had known she wouldn't be coming back. Darius turned to Kyle and Jensen. "We remember. That's enough." He clenched the tag in his fist. Mara wasn't a name the history books would ever write down. But to the crew of the Iron Will, she was more than a name. She was a legend. And legends never die. The final lesson. As the years passed, the war raged on. New battles were fought. New heroes rose. But something had changed. The Torqueri no longer underestimated humanity. They knew now. Even with their technology, their numbers, their weapons, humans would always find a way. They had taken something discarded, something seen as useless, and turned it into a superweapon. That was the true strength of humanity. Not their ships, not their guns. Their ability to turn weakness into strength, loss into legacy, defeat into victory. And no empire, no enemy, no species in the universe could ever take that away.